Now let us turn our Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 25 as we continue in the study of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 25. Now the title today is Not Being Self-Entitled. Not being self-entitled. We have just read this passage, or heard this passage read. We see David, having done much for Nabal, goes to him humbly, asking for some provisions. And then we must learn, rather, from this attitude of David, how does he approach Nabal? Did he have this self-entitled attitude, a sense that it is his right? And then we will contrast against Nabal's response, which is very opposite to David's. Now, I do not want to skip over a passage like that because we live in a day and age where self-entitlement, the personal rights, are so strong and so, in fact, advocated that it has created a generation that is, just simply say that, self-entitled. That's what it is. Now, just a few days back, I read about this Australian CEO, right? She runs a company. Her name is Jane Lu, right? Jane Lu. And she spoke about the Generation Z. You know Z? Generation Z, you know that, right? The Generation Z workers. Now, she is a dedicated advocate for Generation Z workers. So she tries to employ Generation Z workers, right? So she feels that she must give them a chance, and she likes to work with them. So, but even so, this 38-year-old founder of a very successful brand in Australia, Showpo, I think. Now, she said this of the Generation Z people. Now, they say they generally have higher expectations, all right? So this is the difference between them and the millennials. They have higher expectations, specifically around growth, right? They want faster and more frequent promotions, all right? Now, she don't have a major problem with that, but it's something that they feel the Gen Z workers, who I think she has a right to commend because she predominantly employed Gen Z workers in a company, well, they have expectations about things. And she said, well, you know, while they're great to work with, it is difficult. There are certain things that you must know if you want to work with Gen Z people. Now, I want to say first and foremost, I'm not generalizing, but by and large, society acknowledges, all right, there is this increase of a generation that has certain higher expectations, and she gives examples. For example, she said, well, for instance, flexible working conditions. All right, flexible working conditions. You know, after COVID, people got used to working from home. So it's a flexible working conditions is not something that is a privilege, but they just naturally see it as an essential, expected thing to be given. It is not a perk. It is something that is expected, all right? And they say that it is also harder and harder to retain Generation Z staff. No, while they have this excitement and so on about work, but they constantly seek affirmation. They constantly want feedback, and they constantly expect personal guidance in their jobs. And specifically because they want to know if what they're doing will actually bring about the expectation they want. So they say, well, if I do this, if it doesn't contribute to my promotion, doesn't contribute to what I want, more salary, whatever it is, then she realized that they begin to be disinterested. Their interest, their energy wane very quickly. In other words, to them, everything that they do is for me. If it benefits me, it's all about me. I'm not really here to fulfill the company's goals. What is it in this company that is for me? In fact, she said at the interview for one of them, this young lady asked the CEO, well, in this area, what are my development opportunities and job role and all that? Then the CEO said, well, I don't go down to the nitty-gritty, but I will, the department manager will know. And she said she fell off a chair when this young girl said, well, can you please get the department manager here now and explain to me? She was shocked. The kind of self-entitlement that she expects. So she repeats, well, it's exciting to work with them, but you must be aware. The kind of pressure they bring to managers to expect constantly telling them how they will get promoted, and they want it hard, they want it fast, they want it frequent. The demands for flexibility and so on, now it becomes difficult to work with them. In fact, they say increasingly you do not find loyalty among the Generation Z. Anywhere else that fits their expectations, where their self-entitlement is met better, they will just leave. The need for this topic today is great. Christian, we live in the world, right? We are to bear the testimony of God. Is this how we should behave? Now, this self-entitlement attitude can affect, right, not just job. I'm just reading jobs, just to give an example. It affects every aspect of your relationship on earth, in your homes, between husband and wives, children towards parents, and so on. In fact, you see that in children today, right? I want pizza. Fried rice is boring. From a very young age, they learn it from school. The expectation that I get what I want. I want the latest track shoes. I don't care, I just want it. I want to go on certain holidays. This is the kind that I want. Why are we always evangelizing to our relatives and not going to Disneyland and Universal Studios like others? Why are we doing this kind of holidays? I want certain things. I saw this little video clip of this child, all right? This child, very adorable, right? The parents bought her a gift. And then, as usual, they opened one box after another. She was very excited, throwing the ribbons, the paper, ripping, and finally she reached the last one, she opened, and then it was a pen. Her face turned from excitement to anger. She glared at the parents, all right? She took the pen and threw it at the parent. Instead of grabbing all those paper and threw it at the parents because she did not get what she felt she was entitled to. The parents was just playing a prank on her, all right? They had something else nicer. Then we gave her what she wanted. She was glowing with happiness and all that. And not a single word of thanks. I'm entitled to this. If I don't get it, I throw a tantrum, all right? So you see all this happening today. I think this passage brings to us many lessons about, how not to be self-entitled. Let's learn from David for a start, all right? Now let's look at our Bibles. Let's look at our Bibles, chapter 25 of 1 Samuel. Now the first thing we learn about David's non-self-entitled behavior, all right, is this. Now we know that he has been protecting Nabal's people, Nabal's property. But yet, in verse 4, now when David heard Nabal did shear his sheep, it's that time of the year, that season, and David sent out 10 men, all right, to say to them. Now, and the greeting that he says to bring to them, the greetings, look at verse 6. Now, he was very specific in verse 5. Greet him. Greet him. Verse 6. And they shall say to him, say this, peace be both to thee, peace be to thine house, peace be unto all that thou hast. The attitude of courteousness. Self-entitled people are not like that. Why do I need to greet you? Right? In fact, we'll see later on about Nabal. Courteousness, politeness in manners. Christian, are we like that at work? Are your children like that? This courteousness of greeting. I constantly emphasize this, parents, and we implement it in Sunday school, that the children must greet the teachers. That they, as they walk in the hallway, they see the older adults, especially the elderly, teach them to greet. Why? Because this is building in them a sense that I am not like the center of the universe. This humility of courteousness, greeting. David honored him as a father. So they call him your son. That's a kind of courteousness that naturally comes up. Are you like that at the place of work? Sometimes I walk up and down, and the children are running down from Sunday school. Now when they begin to greet, you can see in their demeanor, not a self-entitled attitude, but I must notice others, greet them. Now we move to the second thing about the non-self-entitled attitude. Look at verses 7 to 8. Verses 7 to 8. Now I said, and now I have heard that thou hast shearers, and now thy shepherds which were with us, we heard them not, neither was there aught missing unto them, all the while they were in Carmel. Now the first thing we notice is, now David doesn't make unreasonable requests. His request was not unreasonable. He gave reasons, all right? He gave reasons. We did protect your people. Not only protect them, all right? We protected your material goods. We didn't hurt them. We didn't take things from them. Now, I tried to find some definitions of self-entitlement. And this is quite consistent across dictionaries and people of the world. They say self-entitlement is a believing in oneself to be inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. Believing oneself to be inherently deserving privileges or special treatment. A feeling that you have a right to do or to have what you want without having to work for it, or without having to work in a way that you deserve it, but simply because of who you are. Right? These are some of the definition. David, did he show this kind of attitude? He did do something. No, he did much. This protection was, even later on you read, his servants said, they were like a wall, right, to people, to the wild animals, a wall to those who may come and, attack us. They were like a wall, right? The protection of such a huge number of livestock and workers was not a small thing. So David simply asked, we have done this. He did not say, I demand. He was not a gangster. Now, in fact, from what I read in those days especially, and even today, very often when people offer this kind of protection to farmers, there is an unspoken understanding, all right? We don't take it for granted, all right? We are grateful to them. And these people do it knowing that they hope to have something. But most of them just demand, actually. You don't give it to us, we're like gangsters. Then we'll kill your animals. In David's time, it was quite strong. So David was not saying, give me something for nothing. His requests were not unreasonable. Do you go to work with that kind of expectation? I'm Gen Z, I'm this very creative group of people in our generation. You should be very thankful that you hired people like us. Do we have that kind of attitude? Just because we are creative, you should pay us more already. You should promote us more often. Students, when you go to school, are you like that? Right? Walking around like you are God sent to make the school famous because of your skills and so on. Well, David was not like that. In fact, David had great skills. We read about them. Now, the next thing you see in verse 8. So he did not ask anything without saying that, I've done something. I hope that you will consider that. Reasonable demands. Verse 8. Now he said, ask thy young men, and they will show thee. Right? So again, don't just take my word. We did much to help you. Now, but he says this, wherefore let the young men find favor in thine eyes, and we come in a good day. We come in a good day. Now, what is this? What is this? Now, he was not someone who actually imposed on others. People who are self-entitled are the opposite. He would not impose. He said, this is a good day. Now David knows that, well, if I come on another time, not the shearing period, not the harvest reaping period, it might be different. Maybe they are also suffering difficulties. But look at verse 4. When David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep, he knew that, well, then this is a time of probably abundance. I won't impose on them at other times. I only go at a time where I think that they should have enough to spare. Are you an imposing person? You know, sometimes there are people who impose on others' time, impose on others' possessions and all that. They just expect that people must make this available to us. Have you met people like that? They say, oh, I'll meet you at this time and so on. And then next thing you know, they just change the time and don't even let you know. And then you turn up and then they say, oh, you know, sorry, I'm not free. Maybe we set another time. We train people, students that we pick, that you must not be like that because it will breed in you a self-entitlement that coming to pick you to come to church is something that is an entitlement. We are very happy to do that, don't mistake me. But when you just, well, I don't care, well, when you turn up, you wait for me, oh, I forgot to wake up. It's not the attitude that the Christian should have. Well, I'm thankful that many who learn that, they change, right? This is that kind of attitude. Imposing on others with no qualms. But David was not like that. Examine our own lives, all right? He came when it was a time of convenience, probability that someone can help. When you want to ask for help, this is not to say you cannot ask for help. The moment you ask for help, you are self-entitled. But a non-self-entitled person watches all these things, all right? He waited, shearing time. Then I ask people to go there. Now, furthermore, look at how humble he is. How humble he is. Now he says in verse 8, well, I pray thee, I plead with you, I beg you. How humble was David? He did not come with feeling that I have rights, having done what I've done. And the understanding in those days is that you should provide for me. Well, he said, I plead with you. The humility extended to one of a beggar. A beggar. Self-entitled people do not have this kind of attitude. All right? Beggarly. I beg of you. Now here is David who knew he has been anointed as king, who knew that one day he will be king of the entire nation. He knew that God was using him. He has accomplished great things. He was sung about in the nation. He continued to bring victory against the enemies for the nation, but he did not claim to be recognized for all this. He came and said, I beg you. He don't say, and to thy glorious, victorious warrior of Israel. No, to thy son. He put himself under Nabal. That kind of humility. David knew that, well, one day he will be king, but he did not demand for things like all this kind of expectation. One day I'll be king, so you better start treating me well now. Are you humble enough? Whenever, even if you felt that, well, I do need to ask for something, do you walk up and say, I have this right to ask for this, to demand for this? Maybe even if you had some right, like David. But learn, a non-self-entitled spirit is one that says, I beg you. Now then the last thing, all right? The last thing. Not only that he did not demand to be recognized for his status and all that, now he doesn't have demanding expectations. Demanding expectations. Now how do we know? Look at verse 8. He say, give, I pray thee. All right, give, I pray thee. I plead with you. I beg you. Whatsoever, in verse 8, whatsoever cometh to thine hand, and unto thy servants, and to thy son David. Whatsoever cometh to thy hand. Did David demand, I want so many this and that. I want so many of another thing, all right? He made no such demand. He simply said this, whatever is in your hand, means whatever you have to spare. after you've given up, you've taken care of your people, whatever is remaining in your hand, we are beggars. Just give us those things. You know, the statement that the world often uses, beggars cannot be choosers. All right? Because children don't understand that they are actually beggars. Right? How do you feel, young ones, when I say you are a beggar? You literally live under the goodness and graciousness of your parents. You are beggars. You should not say, I don't like whatever it is, all right? This and that. This is boring. This is not tasty. This is not according to my taste. I don't like it. I want this instead. Where shall we go for lunch? Where shall we go for... I don't want to go here. I don't want to go there. I want this. I want that. But David's heart, one day, is non-self-entitled. He knows, I'm a beggar, and beggars cannot be choosers. He did not choose what he wanted. Anything, up to you, that's in your hand. Oh, that kind of attitude is very missing for today. That is why, like the CEO says, many of them, they come into the company with the idea, by when I want to be what, in what position, get what kind of salary, all right? They don't feel that they are there to serve. They are the grace of the company to meet the company's goals instead of their own goals. So they demand. Give whatsoever that comes to thy hand. Children, will you be like that at home? What do you want to eat today? Daddy, mommy, anything that is in the fridge. Anything that you want to cook. Build that in yourself. All right? Same for spouses. All right? Are we like that at home? Now, I'm not saying if your wife say, McDonald's every day. We studied that at family seminar. It is failing in your responsibilities. So whatsoever comes to your hand, he just merely appeal to Nabal's kindness. That's all. Are we like that? Examine ourselves. The next time we are at work, in school, at home, learn to be like David. But now let's look at self-entitled behavior, the self-entitled spirit. Self-entitled spirit. Now look at verse 10. Now we come to Nabal. Verse 10. And Nabal answered. What was his answer? The answer to David's servant, who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? Now the attitude of superiority. That is why self-entitled people, they just say, I expect to be treated different, special. Why? Because they feel that they are superior. Now, the world teach many of us today, especially young people in school. Maybe that's why the Gen Z are more easily fall easily into this self-entitlement attitude is that, you must be demanding. All right? It's a sign of self-confidence. Maybe the adults are like that at work as well. I must assert my rights and all that. They say this is a good thing. You must feel that you're worth it, whether you're really or not. You must feel that way. Well, here is Nabal. Who is David? Right? Who is the son of Jesse? It's not that he doesn't know who they are. His point is, I don't care about who David is. I'm the rich one here. David is the beggar. I'm the superior one. This sense of superiority is the beginning point. Others are nobody. Now then, we see another thing. So it begins there. When you walk into a shop, when you walk into, when you're receiving certain service, how do you feel? I am the customer, right? Christian, don't be like that. That is not the kind of testimony you bring into a shop. Now let's go on first. The next thing is this self-entitlement attitude is one that is as if the world owes us something. Others always owe us something. It's owed to us. What we want is owed to us. We take for granted things. Now, let me remind us again. This is a period of Israel's history, and we saw earlier on where the Philistines, all right, look at chapter 23, Then they, chapter 23, verse 1, then they told David, saying, behold, the Philistines fight against Keilah, and they rob the threshing floors. We studied that. It's very common for the Philistines to wait for all the harvesting season, shearing included, to attack the children of Israel. We won't do anything. Well, the self-entitlement Philistines, right? We wait for them to do everything, and we walk in and take over, and we expect that they give us. If not, we will kill them. The fact that Nabal had all this opportunity to still harvest, shear his sheep and all that, now it's a proof of the protection that he has received at that time. They were constantly attacked. We read constantly, Saul having to run home and go fight battles against the Philistines. This is that period. But to him, this taking for granted as if, well, David should do this for me. I'm the rich one. Well, in fact, he says, so what? So what? So what if it's David? Who is he? It's that kind of attitude. So what if it's my parent? So what if it's teacher? So what if it is the government? So what if it is my parent? And so on. So what is that attitude? I watched a conversation a long time ago with a father and a child, all right? And this father said, you know, your attitude is like, we owe everything. Everyone around you owe it to you to give you what you want, right? I'm your parent. And the child simply say, so what? So what? All right? Watch this heart of ours. Self-entitlement makes you feel that in every situation, in every situation, special treatment is expected. So what if David does this? You know, some people say, what's your point? You know, after he described, we did this, we did that. You can even ask your servants very humbly, what's your point? That's often our attitude, right? As parents tell the children, that was your point? That kind of, horrible, horrible attitude. We expect, when we have this self-entitlement attitude, we expect that people bend over for us. Bend over for us. I expect that David bend over for me. Who is he? We expect that people treat us special. Right? We take for granted all the things that people do for us in our daily lives. Parents, be very careful. We'll talk about it somewhat afterwards. Right? Now then we have this attitude of accepting favors without returning them. Accepting favors without returning. It naturally leads to that. You know what people often use as a word? Freeloader, right? Freeloader. Sometimes people invite you to the house, right? And then you outstay your welcome, and then yet you continue to expect things. I had a relative who at once, people travel over to Singapore to holiday, and this person in Europe heard that Singaporeans are very generous and very hospitable people, all right? And then she heard of things about what Singaporeans would do to host and people. And then she went to this relative and said, I'm coming to Singapore. And then she came. And then the relative was very nice. She said, well, you know, we have extra house, so you can stay there for the holiday. And next thing she knew was, when she was in the house, she had a whole long list of, you know, I need this in the fridge, I need this, and all kinds of things. The young generation. And why is this? And they say, I'm going to this place. What time will you pick me up? So the relative, what? They come and do everything. And then at the end of it, just leave the place in a mess like nothing. Freeloader. And just go. Now Christians, whenever we are given some favor, we must be people that return the favor willingly, readily, and a heart that is like that. Why should I help David? Right? Despite all the explanation given, by the entitlement attitude. Now then the next one we see about this entitlement attitude is, look at verse 11. All right? Verse 10. Right? There are many servants nowadays that break away, every man from his master. So he's basically saying this. You know, David, who is he? He should be serving King Saul, right? But he broke away from his master, kind of hinting that. You know, nowadays, Young people like that. They say, Pastor, that's you. It's always us young people. Young people are always like that. So he's making that statement. Now, but it has been explained to him. They were not asking to be a freeloader. Right? He said, you can even ask yourself. He would not bother to find out. And he just say, accuse David of laziness. Accuse David of rebelliousness. Should he deserve anything? When we are self-entitled, we will find many excuses. We do not feel that people deserve anything except us. And we are very quick to find excuses. Why should I do this for the person? Why should I do that? We don't feel that others deserve anything except us. Is it true that David broke away from Saul? It was false. Saul wanted to kill him. The wife knows. The servants knows. We'll see that next week. The nation knows. All right? He's nearby. He would know. Now, actually, I would say this. Is it a bad statement that there be many servants nowadays that break away for every man from his master? Now, let's take that with the understanding that we can ask this question because we are not to encourage laziness. We are not to encourage people who can work but are self-entitled. I don't want to work. I want certain kind of jobs. These jobs are lowly. So go around church. I got no money, right? Please give me money. We do not want to encourage the wrong, sinful behavior. It is not bad to ask that, but in a case where it is genuine, all right? Don't feel like, the self-entitlement attitude, I deserve things, but others don't. Others don't. Everything is about me. Now then we move to this, or I would say, everything is for me, not others. I would not do anything to benefit others. Look at verse 11. Shall I take my bread, my water, my flesh that I've given for my shearers and give to men that I don't know? It's very self-entitled people have a spirit that is very self-centered. My, and mine. Beyond that, I don't care. Oh, a spirit of not kind, not helpful. A spirit that is unwilling, right, to be gracious to others. They just feel that it's all mine. I deserve it. I should not need to give it away. That was not how Israelites were supposed to treat each other. Now, but this coming one is particularly something that we have to be careful of. Then he says in verse 11, right, shall I do this? Shall I do that? Shall I do this? Now, as if he's the victim, right? Self-entitled people are like that. They always paint themselves to be the victim. I'm the one who is now suffering. I'm the one. Why must I do this? Now, like I mentioned just now, when you go to a shop, yes, you're the customer. When you pick up the phone and complain about your NBN, right, or your phone reception, yes, you're the customer. But let us, as Christians, learn not to have this kind of I'm the victim mentality. Whenever I make calls or on the phone to get some service, I find it very amusing. They will have recorded messages, or when I go to a shop or a government ministry to apply for something, you have these signs there or this recorded voice to say that they will not tolerate any abuse of their employees who are giving a service, right? We live in a day and age that is like that. Even in government ministries, on the phone or in the shop or in the office, we will not tolerate, and they give a list of things that people would do to their employees. Shout at them, throw things at them, spit on them. This is the society we live in, to the point, to the extent where even government ministries have to put up things like that. We have reached a stage in society where if I'm the customer and I don't get what I want, I'm the victim. We kick up a fuss, all right? We demand, we shout. I'm the victim. I didn't get this. I didn't get that. Oh, that is the society we live in today. Are we as Christians careful? Are we careful? How do you view the government? How do you view parents? How do you view authorities in your school, at your workplace? Now, do you have a victim mentality that whenever you don't get what you want, you feel that it is your right to kick a fuss? Now, I quickly mention here about children. Parents, watch this very, very carefully. All right? When you see your child have this mentality, then that they throw a tantrum, and they feel it's their right to do so, and you pander to it. You don't deal with them. You don't teach them. You don't pull them aside and persevere in teaching them. You are going to let your child grow up to be a monster. More of that later, all right? So we see some of this attitude of Nabal. But now we come to the dangers of the self-entitlement mentality. What are some of the dangers? What are some of the dangers? Well, clearly. Now, it is going to creep into our attitude at home. I've mentioned that. It will destroy the home. It's going to creep into our friendships. It's going to destroy friendships. That is bad. But there is something far worse. There is something far worse. I am not preaching this to build moral, socially apt, courteous people, citizens of the country and the school. I have a bigger concern. Scriptures have a bigger concern that when this begins to creep into our attitude, in our relationship with God, it surely will, because this will be who you are. Is it little wonder that Christianity today, in order for it to work for people in the world today, it is one where the church is here to please you. It's one where the church is here to ask, what do you want? Is it little wonder that these days when worshippers do not like a certain direction, even if it is not sinful direction, but it doesn't suit me, gets angry at the church? I have a right. I give money to the church. I give tithe and offerings. The church must do what I want the church to do. Right? We don't serve. I give money, so what else do you want? That kind of attitude will begin to creep into our lives. The danger of ungratefulness to God. The dangers of ungratefulness to God. God is my Savior. I expect Him to provide for me, to care for me. Why do many Christians get angry at God these days? I had a conversation with, a long time ago, someone who has left our church. It's a very heartbreaking situation. And this person was serving, all right? It was good. We used the person. Now, but after a few years, this person said, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. But the person would not tell me. But it became increasingly difficult for others to work with this person. Then they come to me and say, Pastor, this is happening. I say, what does the person say? And the person says, well, I've been doing so many things for God. I serve in this, I serve in that. In my after work, I do this and that. In the background, I do so many things for God. I even obey God to practice living a holy life, and so on, and separate from falsehood. I do all these things for God for all these years. But why does not God give me what I want? You say, no, that's why I don't want to serve anymore. Don't ask me to do this anymore. So I spoke to the person. I said, what has happened? He said, I only want one thing in my life, and that is to get married. Only one thing. What is it so difficult for God to give me that one thing? All this while when I serve, As a selfless, is it so much to ask God for just one thing? Unholy expectations. And I ask the person, and a Christian, if you ever have such a thought, God, I just ask one thing, my health to be cured of this. I ask only one thing, my child to be healed. I ask only one thing, whatever it is. Then I ask the person, and I hope we think like that. All of us can fall into that. I'm not saying this with anger in my heart or pride in my heart. It was a very scary moment for me that we can become like that. When we grow over time with such a self-entitled attitude, if I do something, I expect something. I don't do something, I expect something as well. If I do something, I expect more towards God. It will be like that. I hope we will think like that. I ask the person, you know, that Christ, God, suffered and died and set aside his glory to save you. Is that not enough? Is that not infinitely enough for you to feel this absolute gratitude that, Lord, I can live my life 1,000,000 times over and do and sacrifice my life 1,000,000 times over, but I still cannot repay a drop of what I owe you in this sea of goodness? I said, just the very thought that you will not go to hell should make us feel that, God, even if you don't do anything for me after you saved me, you leave me alone to rot, but you saved me. The Christian should every day still bow as a beggar in that corner and say, God, I am so thankful I am not going to hell. Even if you do not provide for me a single thing until I go to heaven, God, I bow with infinite gratefulness towards you. That is our heart. This attitude of self-entitlement will not breed such a heart. What else is dangerous? To continue on this, we will begin to feel entitled to our own lives. We will begin to feel entitled to our own lives, our own right. I choose to do what I want to do, pursue what I want to pursue. If God says this is spiritually the best for you as a single, for you as a father, as a mother, the best spiritually for your family, the best spiritually for your personal walk, I don't care. I don't care. I am entitled to do what I want to do. Don't talk about convictions, right? Christian, I want to be very frank. Do not talk about, I'm not convicted about this, and therefore I have a right not to do it. Please do not think like that. That is self-entitlement attitude. I explain to you why. Anything that God says is spiritually best for you. Do not say, well, this is not sin, right? And that is how we are today. Is this sin? Can you prove to me this is sin? We go as close to sin as possible, as long as it's not sin. Or, if you can't prove to me and you can't convince me that this is sin, then I have a right to do what I want. But there's always the principle. Choose that which is excellent. If God gives that which is excellent, and you know in this, is excellent for you spiritually, for your family spiritually, don't give God this argument. Like you are the victim. Give God this argument, well, I'm not convinced. Don't force me to do this, Dad, Mom. I'm not convinced. You show me, Dad, Mom, or Pastor. There's always that which is best. The heart must always, I want to be the very best. Give the very best. Have the very best spiritually for you, Lord. I may not be convinced, but Lord, you know what? If this is spiritually best, I submit to it. No self-entitlement at all. I want to enjoy what I have. I want to give to my children what I never had. Well, as long as it's not sin, I don't care. Now, I come to this one thing, right? So there's this unwillingness to return our life to God. There's always this right to hold on to certain things that we want. If I'm not convinced, I'll hold on to it. Unwillingness to return your life to God. This part is mine, God. You cannot touch it. Now when we ask ourselves then, what is the solution? What must I be careful of? Right? With this last section, then we close. Look at David's heart, then you will know. All right? Look at David's heart. Now, for David in verse 8. Now, first and foremost, he said, give, I pray thee, a beggar's heart. Whatsoever cometh to thy hand, and thy servant, and to thy son David. Now, this heart of thankfulness, this heart of gratefulness, that whatever I receive, I will be thankful. I will be thankful. Now, when we think about this, in fact, you will realize that self-entitlement and gratefulness is inversely proportional. You know, it's the opposite. When self-entitlement grows, gratefulness decreases. When gratefulness grows, when gratefulness starts, self-entitlement begins to end. Gratefulness is something that the Christian must cultivate. It's something that the Christian must learn to have. All right? Give me whatever is in your hand, and that is enough. That is enough. I am grateful for that. The solution to a self-entitled heart is gratefulness. Now maybe I'll start with parents. That is why, parents, you must teach your child to say thank you for everything that they receive. Every time they walk away from the dinner table, teach them to thank. Till today, I still thank Sharon. Every time I get up from the dinner table, from the meal table, thank you for preparing that. Because I know the day I stop, I will take her for granted. The day we stop saying thank you, we will take things for granted. We will begin, I'll put it this way. We don't say thank you because we don't think much of it. I'm expected to receive it, right? Now, even if you are, have a thankful heart. Otherwise, you begin to say, God, I didn't ask you to die for me. You want to die for me? Then save me, then that's it. Well, Nabal can say, David, I did not ask you to protect me. But the fact is he received protection. Thankfulness is something that we must cultivate. Thankfulness is something that we must choose. Thankfulness is something that we must have generation after generation. Starting with your children, when they don't say thank you, they don't say, never mind. Right? I'm very grateful for some parents when people give their children something and then the children didn't say thank you, and the parents say, what are you supposed to say? The parents will always say thank you. What are you supposed to say? They make them think, thank you. But some child exhibit the sinful nature, right? Knows that they should be grateful, but this is the self-entitlement, sinful nature in us. Refuses, walks away. And then parents will say, no, then come back, right? Or take the thing away. And then sometimes we feel embarrassed. It's okay. We shouldn't say it's okay. Just stand there. Let the parent teach the child until the child's humility is broken, our pride is broken. I must say thank you. Same for the adult. Well, I think this is a reflection of David. You read his Psalms, every small thing, he is thankful for it. Thankful to God, even when he goes through trials. All right? So when gratitude begins, self-entitlement begins to end. Now, last but not least, now understand that none of us is entitled to anything in our lives. That's the problem with Nabal. It's mine. Look at verse 10. Verse 11. My bread, my water, my flesh, for my shearers, right? Why was he so entitled? Why does he feel that, well, he doesn't need to feel grateful to anyone? Because the idea that it is mine, it was from me. Let me read to you familiar verse that all of us know, 1 Corinthians 4:7. For who maketh thee to differ from another? And what hast thou that thou didst not receive? Now if thou didst receive it, why dost thou glory, as if thou hast not received it? Remember this thing. No matter what we have, they're all gifts from God. Our intelligence, our capabilities. Don't walk around and say, I'm the God sent in this company, in this school. Everything that we have is from God. And therefore, everything that we have is to be used for God. He was very selfish. He would not give. He would not share. Because he feels that it's his. None of us can say that anything we possess is ours. Parents, one of the biggest problems in our day and age is this. Many families are very privileged. We do not live in poverty. We do not live under the line of poverty. We can afford many things, but therein comes the danger. We want to lavish our children with many things, good things. Not that in themselves they are evil, but think very carefully. We want them to have the best of phones, of laptops, of shoes, of clothes, of education, whatever it is. We lavish all these things on them. And over time, because we can, and we begin to like, it feels good, it's nice to pamper them with all these experiences, toys, and so on. You can be building eventually a child that expects that this is how life treats them. They expect that this is how life treats them. Adults, have you grown up and become like that? Singles, have you become like that? From a nation which, only one child, and then you are the center of everything. You get everything that you want. Then you begin to have this kind of attitude. Now let us learn from David as well as Nabal and go forth and live a life that's truly thankful. We are going to sing the closing hymn about, for us to think, God has given us everything. He gave us his life. Let us ask, what have we given to him? And not be a self-entitled Christian. Let us rise to sing 406. Shall we rise? 406. Let us rise 406.